Hey everyone. So I made a great video. Don't often say that, but I did. I think I did a pretty good job several times of releasing my pre-draft rookie board, what it was, talking through the players. I can't upload. It just got too big. I can't upload a 50-minute video. When it was 20 minutes, it wasn't quite right. When it was 40 minutes, try to directly stream straight to YouTube. Thing is when I use OBS, I can use a lot of different features. I got a better ticker. You can see better visuals. You can actually see the spreadsheet I'm talking about. StreamYard's great, which is what I'm using to go live to you right now. And it'll become a YouTube video, which I'll spread around. But I do miss the features, right? But this is the best way I've got right now. OBS isn't able to hook up with YouTube. I don't care what to say very well right now. And my internet's low enough that it's constantly when I try and do it that way. So this is the smoothest, best way I've got. So I apologize that I don't have many graphics or very enough as I'd like, but I'm just a lone guy, guys. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not going to make the best videos in the world. Hopefully you find some of the content of use outside of that. Here I am. Draft is this weekend, and I have a pre-draft. I found it really useful to take a pre and a post-draft snapshot of what I see of players and how I value them, and really sketch out basically a dynasty strategy for my rookie draft year over year. I've learned a lot from looking at it pre and then post draft, what went right, what went wrong, and improving my process, frankly. So I've got to lock it in because the draft is this weekend, and that's what I've done. The link to that will be, it's been Patreon only for a while, but I'm going to make it public. It'll be in the notes of the video, and you can go see it there. All of it is, sorry, I get big. Maybe it'll be small this time, where I've done it so many times I'm able to say it with more brevity, but my hopes aren't high. Got a comment. Hey, Philly, late night stream. Yeah, I didn't think anyone would be up, Philly. Funnily enough, I had this done. I was going to go to bed at a decent hour tonight, and then all my problems with streaming happened. But anyway, I want to make a video, so here we are. I'm going to show you my board and talk through the first round, and then maybe do another one for the second round, so a reasonable size to actually consume. Again, problems with doing StreamYard. Look, this is a picture I've got for you. Or we can do this. I don't really like either. So what I'm going to do for you is put up, get rid of this thing. And I'm going to put up the draft board here. Still not great, right? Again, maybe follow the link and look at it there, because this kind of view isn't going to be great. It's just what I got. I live in a small little place towards eastern Kentucky. Our internet isn't great. I've got no incentive to improve it either. I can do this, but I feel like this is actually less dynamic than me, and that's saying something. So here we go. I'm going to talk you through it as best I can. First round, I've got my ranks up, and it's in the link. They're all down at the bottom of the sheet. My positional ranks, my pre-draft positional ranks are all down here with kind of a tiering. Well, exactly a tiering, and also, a color coding to show you how strong those tiers are, I guess. But what I really try and lock in before the draft is my pre-draft board. Remember, I'm not drafting right now, but I'm trying to sketch out a strategy for how I want to handle this class. Going through it has also forced me to push through the data yet again to get a better idea of how I feel about these players. And I've found a few that I changed just before I did these videos on my pre-draft rookie board that I changed. I've changed some ranks one last time because it's my damn draft board. and I'm going to have it the way I wanted. And I managed to get some other people's opinions out of my head through doing this. So I really recommend taking a post and a pre-draft snapshot of what you think of players by yourself, so you can review it later. I really find it helps. But anyway, let me get to it. My 101 pick for this year is Jonathan Taylor. It's not really a big surprise. I think he's going to be at the top where you've got that positional value at running back and everything else. Jonathan Taylor's the 101. My rookie RB model, my pre-draft RB model, actually uses about 7 different stats. I think it's a little overfitted, actually. But I just want to get some value out of stats for running backs, and it's such a difficult thing to do. So let me talk through. Let me focus on some main stats. What I'm actually going to refer to mostly with running backs is points per game. It's something I actually included in my database, pinned to my Twitter timeline, to try and talk about Henry Ruggs, because I was trying to show the scale of positivity. Where he shows up doesn't show up in typical wide receiver metrics. It does kind of show up in points per game, so I included it in my database. But coincidentally, it's pretty much useless for wide receivers, which again is partly why Henry Ruggs doesn't look great as a statistical prospect. But for running backs, I happen to have it in there, and it actually tested really well. You can't see any of this, right? No, it's just a blur. So points per game and their fantasy points per game average over their career actually has a correlation to their points per game over the first 3 NFL seasons of 21%, according to an R-squared formula. That's how much of the variance it describes. 21% is terrible statistically, but for models, it's actually pretty good. For example, draft round, which actually has a good in the NFL, right? No matter how you want to test it, that tests about 29 to 32% in R-squared across the same test. So 21% is the highest single number I've seen for running back. And so I think points per game right next year, I'll start trying to include it. But where it's only recently been added, I haven't really played around with it in terms of modeling. But it does give you a pretty good idea of the level of prospect and likelihood and success just with a single number. So I'm kind of going to focus in there, and also in efficiency and yards per team touch. Now, those aren't specifically yards per team touches, but they're not all 7 features of my model, but they're the ones I'm going to concentrate on when I talk running backs. So, for example, in Saquon Barkley's draft class, 2 running backs actually average above 20 points per game over their college career. You know the 2, right? Saquon Barkley and also Nick Chubb, right? That was Nick Chubb's year. Oh, no, sorry. It was Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman averaged over 21 points per game. So not a great advertisement, but Nick Chubb averaged over 18. And so you can see how good running backs tend to do pretty well across that stat. By itself, you get some noise. You get some Royce Freeman kind of noise in there, which is why we don't just use one thing, right? But anyway, in this draft class, 3 running backs actually average over 20 points per game over their entire college career. Jonathan Taylor is one. To go back to Saquon Barkley, he averaged about 23 points per game over his college career. Jonathan Taylor averaged 25. Yeah. It's really the only way that Jonathan Taylor stands out over. Well, there are a few statistics like that Jonathan Taylor does better in than Saquon Barkley. But Jonathan Taylor isn't a Saquon for his college team. His main red flag is that he, like 94% of his total yards came from the rushing game. On average, top 12 running backs get 85% of their total yards from the rushing game. So you can see how his receiving role was significantly less than average than we typically like. But in the last season, as everyone well knows now, his receiving game usage did increase. So that's good. So maybe an NFL team can see it, value that, and then try to use him that way in the NFL. But one of the signals coming out of the NFL draft right now is that the NFL seems to like Jonathan Taylor less than we do. Hopefully the draft will sort some of that out. But across all the statistics using my model, from yards per team touched in his best and last year, his total dominated best and last year, And his production score, which is something that I make based age-adjusted production, essentially, is production score, which is position specific. And he's well above average for a top 12 running back. I don't think he's Saquon Barkley. I don't think he's anywhere close, but he's a very clear top-tier prospect, especially in this running back class, even with the level of girth that it actually has at the running back position. Now, to think about dynasty strategy for a second, which is what I told you I do with my rookie board over here, I want to claim as many of the top tier running backs as I can at the start of this draft. I think it's more of a wide receiver class, if I were to guess, but the top of this running back class, this tier 1, is like, I don't want to let him go. However, because it's not a Saquon Barkley class, I'm going to merge the end of my tier 1 running backs with the start of my tier 1 wide receivers, which you always do, but depending on if it's more a wide receiver or running back class, depends on the level of merging, right? In this one, it's just slightly. So the only prospect I have actually merging into that top tier running back class is CeeDee Lamb, who I'll get to soon. But that's a theory. That's my strategy for this year's draft class. Take as many of those top tier running backs that get decent draft capital, and as I can, and then fade into the top of the wide receiver tier, round 104, 105. But anyway, so Jonathan Taylor is 101. I recently changed my 102 rank. That's now Cam Akers. That was an opinion. That was other people's opinions I finally got out of my head. I am not saying they're wrong, but I have to be honest with myself. There's very few ways that DeAndre Swift looks better than Cam Akers. Points per game, Cam Akers had 17 points per game. Again, the average for top 12 running backs is 16. So Cam Akers is over that. He has Nick Chubb level production from college, and that's just really good. That's better than DeAndre Swift, who comes in at 103 for me, who had 14 points per game. I know there are injury concerns and up and down. Again, that's why points per game is in itself the how productive they were in the college career, and it has relatively good predictive or descriptive power of how good they're going to be in the NFL pre-draft. So I kind of like it. DeAndre Swift, there's no fault in DeAndre Swift's profile as far as I can see. In fact, DeAndre Swift was actually more efficient on a per touch basis. He had 4 yards per team touch compared to Cam Akers' 3.4. 3.4 is actually a really worrying number on Cam Akers' profile, but he also touched the ball 655 times. DeAndre Swift only touched it 499. It's hard to stay as efficient with more touches. Jonathan Taylor, by the way, had a 7.5 best year yards per team touch, and he had 945. My model does slightly ding players the more touches they get. It does find reason to have a negative correlation there. I know that's a big thing this year, but it's a very, very small touch. For example, Jonathan Taylor has 945 touches. He gets dinged by my model and still ends up as a very clear pre-draft running back 1 in my model. 16 points in my pre-draft model compared to, well, Cam Akers gets 9.8. DeAndre Swift gets 9.7 in my pre-draft model. And those are really good scores. So just take that for what it's worth. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor, I've got Cam Akers at 2, DeAndre Swift at 3. But really, there's no difference between Akers and Swift. Jonathan Taylor's kind of in a slightly separate, he's a tier 1A, if you like, and everyone else is tier 1B. There are 4 players in that top tier. Akers and Swift are neck and neck, really. But apart from yards per team touch, Cam Akers wins in every category, so I have to be honest. I mean, even the receiving role, 15% of his yards came from the receiving game for Akers, and he's a really dynamic receiver. Swift gets 19 or, well, close to 18% of his yards from the receiving game, so a slightly bigger receiver. But again, the average for top 12 wide receivers is at 85, so Cam Akers is right on the money there. The neck and neck, but honestly, taking other people's opinions out my head, Cam Akers gets a slight edge there. Now, the 4th running back in my tier actually does better than both of them in terms of efficiency, but his overall profile, I think other people's opinion got in my head, and I was starting to downgrade him a little bit. But his overall profile, just on the numbers that I'm using in my model and points per game, is really good. Again, 3 running backs in this class average above 20 points per game over their college career. I've named 2 of them. The 4th one is the 4th guy in my top tier. It's not Cam Akers or Swift. Again, I've said they 17 and 14 points per game over the college career. All right, so back to the draft board. After Akers, after Swift, and really take them in any order you prefer, but that's just what I see. And comes CeeDee Lamb. So I want to start merging in that top of the wide receiver class. So why is CeeDee Lamb first overall? Well, my pre-draft wide receiver model uses about 4 or 5 stats. It's a lot more simple. It's a lot more streamlined, and it's not overfitted as far as I can tell. It uses average receiving yards per pass attempt. It uses average dominator over average, and average, lots of averages here. And it uses production score, which is an age-adjusted, again, metric for how productive they were at different ages and while they're in college. Find it to be pretty useful as a description of how good these players were and how well they predict into the NFL. This is a new version of it. Again, I update my models every year, but I like my pre-draft wide receiver model, but it doesn't rank well. I will say that. CeeDee Lamb is a clear-cut wide receiver 1 when I look through my pre-draft model and then look over the stats that I find most useful. For example, one of my favorite ones that I'm starting to work with and play with is yards per team pass attempt above the team average. So you're seeing how much extra that wide receiver was adding on a per touch basis for his overall team. And I'm thinking of that as a kind of efficiency score. CeeDee Lamb averaged 1.7 yards per team pass attempt above his team's average. The average for top 20 wide receivers with one top 24 season, 1.65. So CeeDee Lamb is slightly more efficient than average. So, and all of his numbers look like that. His receiving yards per team pass attempt is actually 2.53. And the average for top 24 wide receivers is 2.0 yards per team pass attempt. So CeeDee Lamb looks great. He's athletic. He's got a decent athletic profile, slightly undersized. His comp's more range in the top 15 wide receivers rather than top 12 or top 5. But again, production doesn't rank well. And this level of safety in terms of floor, and he projects to get very decent draft capital in the NFL draft. Like, there's nothing not to like about CeeDee Lamb. I would rank, if DJ Moore was in this class, he would be the clear wide receiver 1, Calvin Johnson, the obvious ones, but there's no fault on CeeDee Lamb's profile. I really, really like him, and I want him at the top of the draft. I don't want to miss wide receiver 1 for running back X at the bottom of my tier 1, which brings me to my 1.05 pick, which is J.K. Dobbins. Again, on a pure statistical level, J.K. Dobbins is actually better than Cam Akers and DeAndre Swift across touches, yards, best and last, and average, total dominator, and yards per attempt. Dobbins was more efficient with 5.6 yards per team attempt in his best season, and that's also his last season, which is pretty common for running back. That's when they get the majority of the role. He is the third player in this class, there's 4 of them, to average 20 points per game or more. His profile looks great. I have to dig into more context. And again, this is where I rely more heavily on how he runs, what he looks like. I do take other people's opinions at the running back position a lot more seriously, because production struggles a little bit with running back more than with wide receiver. I'm really confident in Dobbins' profile, but I'm also confident in the opinions that I've taken on Akers and Swift, that they're just more dynamic. They can create more for themselves. We know Cam Akers played in a worse situation with a poor O-line and some other stuff. I'm willing to let that influence me. J.K. Dobbins is incredibly solid and did fantastic in his situation, but he just looks like slightly less of a dynamic prospect, slightly less of a by himself in all situations. He's going to be good player, so he needs to draft a little more. So he just falls to the bottom of my very solid 4-player tier 1s. All right, moving on. Jalen Reagor, this is probably the rank that's going to be most weird for most people. But if I'm going to put my money on a profile that looks like it has a lot higher ceiling than most players in this class, which is, again, more floor than ceiling as far as I can see, is Jalen Reagor. Like I mentioned with my pre-draft model, I tend to favor looking at the average of what a player did at the wide receiver position rather than their best. And Jalen Reagor wins. He had a terrible last season, but just to throw some numbers at you for the sake of throwing it out at you, he had a 32% dominator rating. The average, and that's average dominator, not college dominator. The average of top 24 players is 29, so he's slightly higher. He's one of 2 players in this class that broke out with a 20% dominator rating at the age of 18. And you know I love me some young breakouts when they have the least physical advantage. They haven't been in the weight room as long. They know less about the team. Breaking out at 18 is an incredibly strong signal. And so I love Jalen Reagor. I love everything about his game. He does look bad, but where like his efficiency score is slightly low. His yards per team pass attempt is slightly below that too. That 24 wide receivers, but I think it's all coming from that terrible last year. Outside of that, he looks like an incredibly good prospect, lots of upside, and we're going to get him at a value, so I like him a lot. And that makes a wide receiver position with a historically bad hit rate of our wide receiver 1s and 2s and 3s compared to running backs. Like, it's where you're allowed to consider it cowboy country and swing a little harder. So pre-draft, it's my damn draft board. I'm going to have Jalen Reagor at 2. Deal with it. I love the profile. Model hated it, and me and my model didn't talk for weeks afterwards because I just love Reagor, and it didn't. And most people have him further down, but I don't want to let him slip just for something silly like a model. Screw that model, man. Model dumb. Me dumb. I'm just going to go have fun, and Jalen Reagor is fun. That brings me to 1.07. Justin Jefferson is the exact opposite in many ways. Justin Jefferson hits every number right on the head. I know he played a remarkable amount of time in the slot, like historically level. He was strictly in the slot, but we know the NFL can and will, especially lately, use players in that type of role. And in that role, he had 1.9 yards per team pass attempt above team average. Remember, the average top 24 players is 1.6. Justin Jefferson's an incredible player. All the floor in the world, and it's not outside the realm of possibilities that the ceiling there too. So yeah, I really love Justin Jefferson. I am slightly worried he's going to fall into that AJ Brown category of he falls in a value crack between running backs and more dynamic wide receiver prospects that we're all truthering for. Don't let that happen to you. Make sure if you get the chance to draft Justin Jefferson at the right value, make sure you get it, because he looks like a great player. And I'm excited to draft him. I'm going to remember that and not fall into that value crack. Jerry Jeudy probably should rightly be ranked a little higher, but I've already talked about why I've got the players above him. I do. I'm not taking part in adjustment season this year, people. We're adjusting too much too hard, but he was playing in a tight target crunch situation. Once you consider that his production my model still ranked him 4th in this class, despite being 3% below in production score, despite being, nearly over 10% below the average dominator of successful players in the NFL, 7% below dominator he was below, but he was productive enough and impressive enough, and the model still likes him 4th overall. And that's essentially what people are saying about the Alabama situation. Worse stats, but in a harder situation, you kind of have to like that. No shade to throw here. I really like Jerry Jeudy. He belongs in the top 3 of this class. I have a very well, if you look at my ranks down here, my tier 2 is basically 4 players. I've got Lamb and Reagor at the top. Spoke about them already, but this group of players right here is just one big smorgasbord of combined wide receivers. I have more concerns, not concerns, but less enthusiasm for T. Higgins and Mims. That's why I've put a little tier break between them. Jerry Jeudy and Justin Jefferson, I'm good with getting either of those 2 players. They look fantastic. And again, strategy, moving on to strategy, take the top tier of running backs are gone. If I've missed the very tippy top of the class, I'm going to keep going with wide receiver because there's such a girth of players in that tier for me that instead of switching back to running back, I'm going to make sure that second tier or that second and third tier of wide receiver is gone before I try taking another running back. And that's the dynasty theory I'm trying to play out in my draft board here. And next up, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He occupies a tier all by himself. He doesn't belong in that top tier. He does belong in that second tier, but I want to separate him out a little bit because there's something interesting about his profile. My model doesn't like him overly, But, again, screw that model. But it does favor best and last year for running back, but still, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 1 year where he actually had the role. His last year was a remarkable year, and even then it was a partial season. So over his looking at that points per game stat I was talking about, he had 12 points per game over his college career. That's not good. But we also know that in his last year, he was a lot better than the sum of his parts, is essentially what we're saying. Again, he was a dynamic receiver during that last year as well. The NFL was watching. They know about it. I'm trying to look up quickly. Yeah, his points game in that last year was 23. So if we just take his last instead of his average, suddenly he looks like one of those prospects at the top. Now, I can't fairly do that since I only saw it once and those other players did it more consistently, but he occupies this little separate tier. As long as the draft agrees with me, then I'm really happy with having him between the first tier and the second tier. It's just kind of a floating Clyde Edwards-Helaire island almost. And after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I get to Denzel Mims. Really like the profile. He was very productive through less work. Go back to my wide receiver model. Remember, I was looking at the efficiency stat. Average top 24 players has 1.6 yards per team pass attempt above his team average. That's actually what Mims got. He broke out at 19 at both a 20 and a 30% dominator rating threshold. His breakout age is the same. That's really impressive. He's got the size. He's incredibly athletic. One of the better scores in this class in terms of size and athleticism from my combine score. That isn't in my model, but I do look at it. And he looks like a really impressive prospect. 38% dominator, not my model, but what the hell. And his average dominator is a little low, and that's where we get to some of the problems that drag him down below the rest of the second tier and the upper tier, that first tier of wide receiver for me. He just didn't do it as consistently or as much as some of those other prospects, but it looks like a really good wide receiver. I just need to see the draft a little bit more than for those wide receivers I've already mentioned. And that brings me on to T. Higgins, who sometimes I think about dropping into a lower tier. Below T. Higgins, I have a really interesting value tier. I kind of actually love all the players in that next tier. But T. Higgins did enough. Okay, so I'll allow him in. What was that? Go away. To talk about some of the problems, T. Higgins averaged below, significantly below. Remember, the average is 1.6 in that efficiency score. He was at 1.28. But that's significantly below average for efficiency. His receiving yards per game was 1.6 instead of per team pass attempt instead of 2.0 for the top 24 wide receivers. His dominator rating was 22%. The average was 29. He's at his production score, so his age-adjusted production is kind of right on fine. 0 is good, and he's minus 0.3, so it's fine. He looks productive. He looks like a good player. My comp for him is an upside, rich man's, however you want to say it, Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess had a top 24 season. In the right situation, I think Higgins is going to be great. But like with Mims, I just need it confirmed a little bit with landing spot, if not draft capital. But I want them both to have top 3 round draft capital. The other players, if the NFL faults on them, I don't care. And they're getting it wrong. With these two, I need top 3 round draft capital. So they're a little more dependent on it for me. And we'll see how that plays out this weekend, right? So that is my first round. That's how I'm planning out the first round of the NFL draft, making sure I get that top tier of running back first. That's positional value and early expectation of production, but I want to merge in those top wide receiver prospects. If it's Jeudy for you, I would follow the set. I at least have the strategy of the first round to maybe help you out, where you just switch out CeeDee Lamb for Jeudy, and that's fine by me. Honestly, I can see that. Lamb's profile is just a lot more. There's 0 questions on it. It's just a lot more for me than Jeudy, than Rager, than Jefferson's, for the reasons I mentioned. But honestly, this tier, I could easily see my first tier of wide receiver merging into my second tier here with Justin Jefferson and Jerry Jeudy. I like them all a lot, and that's why I'm taking them heavily in the middle of the first round. Like, hit wide receiver a lot. If all those running backs are gone, before I circle back to my second tier of running backs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then at the end of the round, did I mention him? Oh, no, I didn't. A.J. Dillon. If I've got a choice between A.J. Dillon and the guys in my next tier, or the rest of that tier, I'm probably going to lean trading back, to be honest. A.J. Dillon is something from another era. I guess I'll throw numbers at you since that's my thing. 94% of his yards came from the rushing game. That's the same as Jonathan Taylor, but he never had that last year of suddenly getting a larger receiving role like Jonathan Taylor did. He did average 20 points per game over the course of his career. Remember, points per game, running backs, pretty useful. And more than Swift and more than Akers, but A.J. Dillon is just a rusher, a really, really good rusher. 6.6 yards per team pass attempt as a rusher. Like that, even at Boston College, which I assume is a worse place or an easier place to run. Like, that's impressive, man. So I do value that. But modern era, I kind of want some receiving upside. A.J. Dillon really doesn't have any of that. But he was so productive at that role. And I imagine, we'll find out, NFL scouts and coaches have got to love a runner like that he's going to get a decent landing spot, decent draft capital. We can hope. I'd love to see that guy do what he did in college in the NFL. I did mention that 4 running backs in this class actually had 20 points per game. The other one is not in round 1, you might have noticed. So it's Jonathan Taylor, A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins. The other one I'll just throw out to you. You can go check out where he is in my ranks by following the link and see my draft board. It's Joshua Kelly. Yeah, that helped me elevate him up my board slightly. As a running back flyer or as a running back you're taking just for positional value without any real idea of where he's going to land. Joshua Kelly averaging 20 points per game through his college career. Like that was enough for me. I really like that. All right. So thanks for checking it out. I am doing it live. I didn't expect anyone here talking to me, but I do. So if you can stay with me for a second, I'm just going to, Philly, my pre-draft board is going live. I'm going to put the link in this video. Like, this is being streamed live to YouTube, but then it converts to a regular video. So go check it out there and you'll find it in the comments. I've also shared it on Patreon. By now, the post has gone live and I'm going to retweet that out. So you'll be able to find it there. And again, it's got, not that you can see from this crappy little thing I've got, but you'll see the board and my entire draft strategy, pre-draft draft strategy, and all my running back, wide receiver, all my positional ranks are just below it. And it's just one link, simple enough image, but I found it a really interesting process to go through. So I've gone through round 1. You can look through round 2. Essentially, the draft process in round 2 is take all the rest of the running backs that I like and then take all the wide receivers I'm really excited about, but I really need to know what's going to happen with them in the draft. Tyler Johnson's in there. I would put Tyler Johnson in that first tier of wide receivers, like, really comfortably, if it wasn't for my concerns, this noise we're getting from the NFL that they don't like him. I don't know why they don't like him. I think they're wrong, but I'm going to have to see the draft to see how wrong they're going to take it before I can really do much more with his rank. But he's ranked 205, just as a prequel. Hey, Humble Mindset Podcast. Glad to see you. I didn't think there'd be anyone else up at this time, and I just get a video out. But I'm really glad to see you guys, seriously. Yeah, I hope it's useful. Again, I encourage it as an exercise to do. I really recommend seeing what you thought of players last year and the year before, pre-draft, and then you see how you changed it post-draft. Like, I've seen a lot that has changed my opinion on this class. And one of them's Kalen Ballard being ranked over Jalen Samuels post-draft. I was like, what was I doing there? I was overvaluing the potential that a 3-down role was going to turn into a top 24 running back with a Marlon Mack. Instead, I had Jalen Samuels, who was a decent rusher and had an elite receiving role skill set. Like, just take the guy who's really good at something, who landed in a decent place. Anyway, that's informed my process for the post-draft. Pre-draft, and noticing that I had Rashad Penny over DJ Moore in one particular draft that I did, I looked back at my pre-draft board. DJ Moore is like above everyone, but then I made that mistake with Corey Davis, and that's where I started to lock in, try to decide if this is a running back or a wide receiver class in order to help you tier them. And that's also why the top of the wide receiver 1 tier eats into a little bit the top of the running back tier here. Pretty much strictly, dynasty theory should always be draft the running back before the wide receiver you like. But you have the more nuance in an individual class. You have to have more nuance than that. While it's a really great hammer, like, you don't want to miss on DJ Moore, and it was okay to miss on Corey Davis. And so, yeah. And looking at it pre-draft and then post-draft has shown me not necessarily like edges in fantasy that everyone can use, but for me personally, I can see how I disagree with my own reasoning sometimes. I'm like, that helps me. I encourage it. But anyway, if you just want to see where I'm at, that's what the post-draft board's about. Copy it, paste it, do it yourself if you like. And it's also set up where if you change the rank, the board changes. So you keep the same strategy I've outlined, or you can outline new strategy if you like. To be honest, so it's just a fun spreadsheet you can insert names into. Why not? I hope you guys get some utility out of it, or some use out of it. If nothing else, come roast me for my ranks, right? Because again, I got Jalen Reagor at 2. That's got to be wrong. It's got to be wrong, right? I've got Tyler Johnson. Well, you don't know, but you should go see. I've pushed Tyler Johnson up higher and higher. I pushed him all the way down, trying to be reasonable, but it's my damn draft board now. It's pre-draft. I get to say what I want. I want Tyler Johnson more than most people, and so I've pushed him up. I can't push too high, but yeah. I pushed him up as high as I think is, insanely possible at this point. But yeah. Thanks for checking out this video. If you did, I hope you go check out that draft board. If you can't find it, just at me, at PA Howdy. Let me know, and I'll share it again. No problem. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you next time. Like, I was hoping to get through round 2, for example, but it's already 4:20. I've done this 7 times. My throat hurts. I got to go lay down. So probably not. I'm going to leave you all to discover my ranks for the second round all by itself. I did record that 40-minute take or whatever I did, so I might translate that into a Dynasty Crossroads episode. I talked a lot more about each player through the first 2 rounds, so maybe it'll be there. Any less comments or questions? Philly or the Humble Mindset Podcast? Great names, by the way. Yeah, they're going quiet. Okay. Thanks again, and talk to you next time.